You are Duke of New York. You're hey number one. I can't hear you. You are the Duke of New York. You're hey number one.
Peace, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Sorry for the delay, man. With some wild stuff going on with the computer. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear.
Things be working, and then sometimes I don't be knowing, B. I hope all is well. I hope everybody's been all right. Everybody can hear me all right?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, like stuff be working, and then every so often, what was working for a second, it'd be like it was never doing it. So I gotta figure this shit out. It's crazy. I hope everybody's well. And another great day in the apocalypse. You know, a lot of stuff switching up. You know what I mean? A lot of regimes falling. A lot of new states trying to form. Like it's interesting to just watch it all go down from a old noble perspective. You know what I mean? Because essentially, what we're watching is the redistribution of assets and wealth to our wayward children. You know what I'm saying? Who amalgamated and integrated and intubated so much between themselves that they really are left with a giant mess that they will not pick up because they are continuously participating in the fuckery, you know what I mean? So, excuse my language, but that's essentially what's going down. So, we get a preponderance of buildup that can only create an alternative current. You know what I'm saying? And that current is now playing itself out in different types of arenas, namely the mainstream, as the mainstream narrative of history, continues to crumble. We are confronted with the reality that we are not as victimless and as powerless in all of this as we have been led to believe, and thus it has created a upswell, right, of counter energy that is now actively affecting the mainstream political stratosphere, in that your boy Ye came out with the I don't even know if it's a song or an anthem or whatever it is, but it has it's gonna have a reverberating effect. And the downplaying of it and the constant removal of it is only making it more and more pervasive in the public psyche. You know what I'm saying? To the fact now that it's bringing up old, excuse me, it's bringing up old conversations about who is really what. You know what I mean? Like who's really Yehuda, who's really Nazis, what does that really mean now? How is this in contravention to everything we've been told or led to believe about them? And not only the fact that the reality of all of this is still laid out at the feet of the intelligence agencies and all of these people who brought the so-called white Nazis, the ones who worked with the European, well, I don't even call them Europeans, with the powers of the day to facilitate the removal of the original peoples in Europa, which explains why certain armies had to be segregated, because if they were using you to fight people who looked exactly like you, but they were speaking German or they were speaking French or they were speaking whatever, it would it would kind of throw you off, especially if they're not treating you the way that these other people have been treating you in the country of your origin for the past maybe 150 years up to that point. So you get this, like I said, this upswell of information that leads us to a time period within our own so-called Moorish American or American history that definitely defies or has been omitted from our knowledge. Like they'll talk to us about Bumpy Johnson, you know what I'm saying? They'll talk to us about Frank Lucas, you know what I mean? But they won't talk to us about Sufi Hamid, the AKA the Black Hitler of Harlem. You know what I'm saying? They wouldn't get into that because then they would be getting into who the Axis powers and these people really were, you know what I mean, during that time. I've done videos and stuff like that on the so-called Black Hitler and all of that stuff before, going all the way back to again a DVD I did back in the days called Black Nazis that kind of touched on what this current phase that we in would be like per se. And even back then I couldn't have imagined that it would have evolved into this type of shit. You know what I mean? Where people are actively um, working against the power structure in terms of what we know as Israel and the intelligence agencies, Mossad and stuff like that, to then get into this era now where niggas is like actively dressing up in animal skins in videos, talk about how Hitler like is crazy. You know what I mean? But this doesn't come out of nowhere. Like I said, this is another aspect of history, unfortunately, that we have been deprived of, in the sense that we're only told about the Muslims and the Christians and the Hebrews, but all of the Moors and the people like that in between were never really discussed, you know what I'm saying? Or really brought to the forefront like that. And that's the issue. The issue is that there was a whole so-called Moorish front that existed, you know what I mean, in these time periods that we refer to as the recent past, let's say the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and then what became the 60s, that we had a lot more control and power in, that they really, more so than they really letting on, you know what I'm saying? So I wanted to show you guys some of this, of what I'm talking about. So there was something that they refer to as the Black Axis. Okay. In when you read about the so-called Nazis and stuff, you always hear about different orders and different connections to them. You know what I'm saying? And one of those was this thing that you hear in and out of information split, this group called the Thule Society or the Thule Society, right? They also make like ski gear or some shit like that. But they have a lot of different fronts. But essentially, the Thule Society was a big society from back in the days, and they were the preeminent occultists of that era in Germany. They fostered a unified society basically around understanding the so-called secret of the so-called Saturn or black hole sun, right? And this was an old occult teaching that a lot of other groups, whether they were Muslim, Hebrew, Christian, whatever, they were a part of um, this type of leaning. You know what I'm saying? So remember, so you had like a lot of the hoodoo people, like Black Herman and Pamplin the Devil. There's a book that you could get called The Conjure Times, and when during the invasions, when whole groups of our people would be caught up as POWs and then be shipped to these different camps, they would be ripped away from their traditional ancestral religious or ecclesiastical or mystical rites, right? So this led to the creation of, like I said, the hoodoo men who would travel to different places, or people would travel to them to then get different roots and things like that to be able to heal and tap into the old ways of doing stuff. You know what I'm saying? Because of the kill orders on practicing any type of Moorish type of divinity or rites like that. So that then created a whole upswell of what eventually by the 1800s became known as mesmerism, where you had a lot of so-called magicians and Moors mostly who were practicing that, especially in the Mississippi Delta. You would get old stories. Sister Tess Marcellus told me stories about how her ancestors was just telling her about how the people in the turbans and the fezzes would come in to the town and then, work with them and do business with them or whatever. And when they would leave, sometimes children and members of the community would just disappear with them. So this is also where the gypsy, the whole gypsy mythos and culture starts to come into play, both in America and in so-called Europa, because it's the same people going through the same thing. So these people then create this whole culture now where they start to be able to tap back in to the old ways and how people do used to do stuff, and in that become the intermediary between them and these ancestral spirits, you know what I mean, that are essentially at this point as disembodied energies, basically a part of the singularity, what we'll call uh, the all in all, you know what I'm saying? That then creates that place for us to commune with it. So they become in that. But then some of them, like I said, because this is still in the process of the different wars, people being denationalized, people trying to fight and hold on to whatever lands they got. So, you know what I mean? It's a lot of cross sectioning going on. You know what I mean? Moors calling themselves Indians, all of that. So by the time the 20s and all of that, after the Prophet and all of that, you get a whole militant wave of these Asiatics that are now awakened to not only their Moorish heritage, but then their multicultural heritage, in the sense that they know that all of these people that they claiming, like Father Divine, Sweet Daddy Grace, claimed Portuguese nationality and all of that because he could trace his ancestry back to those Portuguese conquistadors that got shut down by Al-Mansur and then in the 1500s. You know what I'm saying? So they know that the people who became Portuguese in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, these are all the new people. You dig what I'm saying? So they already have this knowledge. But again, because they are amongst the enlightened, some of them take advantage and then use that to their advantage. So by the time you get to things like the Thule Society and all of that, you get the culmination of all of this ancient occult so-called black magic that's now being used to fuel political movements. You see what I'm saying? That are against the so-called new reconstructionist movements, aka allied movements, that are, trying to create a base for themselves to um take control of everything that they have been controlling up until this point now, in terms of post 1900 reconstruction and the influx of the white slaves, and then the white slaves being put into positions of neighborhoods to usurp the original peoples that's there, and then wiping those communities out, turning those into basically ghettos for these people to live at, and then allowing those people to create an infrastructure for themselves to then reestablish the fact that they are the new so-called immigrants or Italians that's there, that's replacing the original so-called Moors or Italians or whoever else that was there that was of the darker skins, that's now being pushed further south or further west. You understand? So this is where places like Tammany Hall and these niggas come into the play, and then they start using the Masonic shit, right, as a means to do that. Meanwhile, like I said, in places like Germany, in places like Transylvania, North Carolina, you know what I'm saying? These Moors are practicing heavy shit, and they're basically bringing it down, and they're basically trying to go against all of that. This is why you can get somebody like Ho Chi Minh being a Garveyite. I believe it's Ho Chi Minh. It's either Ho Chi Minh or Chiang Kai-shek. No, I believe it's Ho Chi Minh. And him then using those tactics to then go in and do all the stuff he did. So essentially, these so-called Black Nazarites, right, um, start being referred to as Nazis, right, or Nazcazium, right. Um, they also calling them Morks, you know what I mean, in Germany, like Mark from Ork, calling them Morks. And these Morks or Marks, you see what I'm saying? Start basically pushing out and then start to establish, certain dominions in old Germany under what they call the what you call the High Germans. You know what I mean? Who are claiming descent from the original Holy Roman Empire, again the Moorish one, the dark skinned ones and all that. And so that spreads all over. You know what I mean? So by the time you get, like I said, to the 20s, you get to Harlem, you get people like the Sufi right here. You know what I mean? And they called him again the Black Hitler of Harlem, right? Because anybody that was really on it like that was seen as militant or on the axis. You know what I mean? Or associated with them. Not to mention that you have Moors from the old Mikado Republic in Nihon, which is Japan, now striving to set up connections with them over here, which is put Hoover and the rest of them niggas on heavy alert because they was trying to stop this upswell. So the more power Sufi got, Hitler got, this Hitler right here, uh, they started they started panicking. And then this nigga started taking over the brackets. So man, this is after the prophets. So they seen how to do it. You know what I mean? That's why so many of them were successful, but because they were ego driven, I believe. All maybe except for Father Divine. He seemed like he was on some one shit, but then he was all about integration. So they all went against the original teachings in some form or fashion. But with Black Hitler, he basically organized all of Harlem, where they started putting pressure on the Ashkenazim Jews, who was putting pressure on the Moorish Zionist Jews of Harlem. Remember them? This is before Zionism. This is before Charles Herzl and them established Zionism. This is American shit. You understand what I'm saying? So the original Zionists was Jews. The original so-called Nazis, original Jews were so-called Moors. The original Nazis was Moors. Like it's getting crazy. You understand? But what's worse is that these guys are radical nationals. You see what I'm saying? He wound up marrying the Queen of Harlem, who was a Creole French princess who also claimed Asian, so-called Asiatic descent. She's the one. They are the one that put Bumpy and the rest of these people on. So that whole nationalistic, self-independent Moorish ideal that you see in the Godfather Harlem, how he do business with, all of that he learned from these dudes, because these are the guys that was keeping Dutch Schultz and what's his name and Lucky and all of these niggas out of Harlem all those years. This was the unseen hand. This is before the Nation of Islam. You understand? This was before all of this. They kept all of this quiet. These are the niggas that was out here, radically out here. Like I said, the turbans and fezzes, and had their own thing. He set up this thing called the Temple of Tranquility. And of course, the media painted them as, a cult, or he was dressing up and all this other type of shit. But all the shit, if you go and read what this nigga was talking about, all the time he got out of jail, and they try to lock him up. Like, this nigga had his own plane. That's how they wound up killing him. They wound up sabotaging his plane. And then he left the whole thing over to the queen. And then she basically ran everything, like I said, up until the point where, but now he was gone because he was the connection to the Axis, to the Thule Society, to all of these so-called black nobles, both of Europa and America, who was striving to keep the old thing going. You know what I'm saying? Because they knew the secret again of the black sun. When Bill Gates and them talking about they trying to build a thing to block the sun out, they not talking about the one you see. They talking about this one. They're talking about the black hole sun that these people do they thing was tapping into. These guys was kicking ass all over the world. Like I said, to the point that the U.S., to maintain the dominance and the illusion of what was going on, they had to segregate that. That's why you had the Red Tails. That's why you had the Harlem Hellfighters. That's why you had the Tuskegee. You see what I'm saying? But they were all separate branches and fighting in different parts of the war. So that way they wouldn't come across who they really fighting, and vice versa. You understand? That's why by the time they got to Vietnam, when they were working to destroy the Mon culture, which we'll get into, the Moorish culture over there of the Mons, to get rid of them, help them get rid of that, the jig was up, because now they in places and all of the art and all of the temples and all that stuff is them. The black soldiers are seeing themselves. The Vietnamese is sending them Garveyite literature and shit like that in the battlefield. You know what I mean? The white soldiers are telling them not to read that because that's propaganda. However, they trying to educate them as to what the original Union was about. Why else would they say? Why would you, if you were fighting a war, think about this. If you fighting a war on all fronts now, on all fronts, and in this war, you are telling, you have all of these so-called black soldiers that's ready to fight, that's ready to wreak havoc on the enemy, and you keep them from fighting, you keep them away from the gear, you just make them build everything and do all the unnecessary shit that you could be doing yourself. They ain't even had the skill to do all of that. All of the labor and all of the skill was coming from the original men that they employed, because these were all of the so-called leftover Moors from the old wars, the so-called merchant marines. You see, you don't hear that word no more. The merchant marines in them, they were the ones creating all of the bridges and all, the whole Army Corps of Civil Engineers and all of that. Those were Moors. Those were original people. How do people that just was getting out of the caves, think about this. This is after the war. All these people was coming over here on these boats. They couldn't read, English, couldn't write, didn't even have names. So how was these niggas over there in Europe all of them years building all of that stuff? Does that make sense to you? That don't make sense. To the point where they had to create public education to get them to assimilate, right, into what their version of Americanism was. So again, why would you have a whole situation popping like that and you not taking advantage of the people who's literally there almost begging you to fight? Also, you could talk down to them and all of that? No, because you had to coordinate with the enemy who also was doing the same thing to their soldiers. You see what I'm saying? To then do that because they were fighting a decoy war. That's what that whole thing was. This is all the same war against us, no matter on what part of the world. Right? Like that's what everybody is not talking about. So then they turn you against your own understanding of what you even dealing with. The so called swastika is ancient. Every culture on earth has used that at some point. Why? Because it represents the 4 points, right? It represents the spiral into the abyss, right? In that swirls into the so-called singularity. This the Fibonacci sequence. It's all the same thing. Like it has nothing to do. Like they don't own it because they used it to terrorize allegedly a group of people that had nothing to do with the rest of the world. A group of people who afterwards seem to have come up significantly from the experience, who consistently make art where they are always making fun of what happened to them. You know how many Hitler jokes Mel Brooks and them niggas done told over the years? Larry David and these people, like, what are you talking about? Like, y'all make money off of this, off of that. You understand? This was a global war against a certain type of people, and those of us that was against it, like, think about it. Why would you have an original woman with a queen of swastika thing? Like, think about it. If it was all about white people, yeah. Oh yes, indeed. Jay Bay said most went to the Navy. Exactly. The majority of people in the army now is all melanated people. Right now, it's mostly melanated people, y'all. I don't know if y'all know that. That's because that's how it's always been. Because it's your army. It's just been repurposed to be somebody else's bulldog. That's it. It's on lease. The mechanisms in it are ancient. They have nothing to do with any of the stuff that was happening. That was just taken over. So the Tsclaves, who they call the Cherokee, who are the Dutch, who are also the Germans, right? And then you have the Creole, who are also the French, right? And then you have an adjunct to them, right? Who you'll call the Haitian, the so-called Haitians, right? But all of that is Creole, Haitian, French. See what I'm saying? The corporate structures, the corpus is what came up and took control of the national and the natural people. You understand? The first treaty that the so-called British made with the so-called natives, right? Who they calling Lenape, these people they weren't referred to that. They were referred to as the Delaware Moors, i.e. Moors, meaning that they were part of the Moorish Empire. The British saw them as part of the Moorish Empire. They're just not seeing them as these Moors here and then these Moors here. That's not how they looked at it back then. Matter of fact, the British themselves were Moors due to the connection between Queen Elizabeth, right, and the Sultan through a business they set up. This is all melanated people still. So, like I said, by the time you get to this level, this right here is the corn palace of the Tsclaves people that was co-opted after the fall. So here is again a swastika, right? But then these are all American flags, but they're not French flag. They national flags. So they still own this. This is us. No bareback horse riding person, right, from the plains created this or even saw this, because we relegated these people to the reservations. They were reserved due to them being invaders. Like Brother Shikamaga said, we invaded, we took over so much that almost half the world was like in a penal colony, the people that didn't want to go with it. So we was building plantations, we was building prisons, we was building, you know what I'm saying, anything to put these people somewhere. So people like him, like I said, the so-called Hitler, would represented a shift in the so-called populace or the Negro populace at the time, because he was again talking about stuff like this. They already know that he got some sort of connection, you know what I'm saying, to the temple. Because like I said, the prophet is the one that reignited this in everybody. So everybody was trying to come up. You see what I'm saying? And so they had their own way of doing it. So over in Deutschland, right? Over in Deutschland, they got their own thing popping, right? They want the Weimar Republic out of there because of all of the crazy deviant stuff that they were doing, and that caused a backlash in the actual communities. And then they started doing the propaganda against black people. But that only started around the time that homie right here, Mohammed Hossein, started coming on the scene and, putting fire to both the so-called black and the so-called white nationalist Germans. His relationship to the Thule Society and all of that, you know what I mean, is what inspired all of them to do that. So like all people at that time, they start now working within the structure, basically to figure out how they're going to take over. And so they start doing that. So what the white people start doing, they start going to niggas like Charlie Chaplin and these people, and they start getting him to make movies like The Dictator to see how people would react to it. And if they could tell, like, you know what I mean? And then started to use him as a double to then do speeches and all that type of stuff, or all of that, right? Then they would dope up the people with they would have the intelligence agencies dope up the people. They would put LSD and shit, and that's how you know it's CIA. They would be putting that shit into people in the water and in the food and stuff. So when people would go to the rallies and getting free water, they would all be crazy. They will all be up. So then they get this nigga Charlie up there. He start going, you think this is the one. And then they run with that. And then they create a whole thing around that while trying to cipher the real energy from the Thule Society that they was actually really working on, which was all the technology. So what did these niggas do? These niggas allegedly did was say, you know what? Y'all want it like that? Y'all can have it. We gonna go to New Swabia. You ain't hear about that, right? Anybody heard about New Swabia? Again, this was all just confirmed in those CIA docs. Same ones they talk about this nigga being killed. Ain't nobody talking about this part though. Because you say, well, how did they do that? Where did they go? How did they let it all happen? They didn't. They was fighting. This is who they was fighting. All of the whole Bismarck Empire, right? Because they had to go through the first war in order for the nobles to see that this was a whole reconstructionist situation with the pretenders, then the former slaves. This is like a break. They trying to break out all over, right? And they're being funded by the disenfranchised versions of us, right? So they're funding them. That's where these people is getting the suits and all that from. Where was these white people who didn't even have clothes? Where was they getting these velvet garments and all the stuff you see in these pictures? Because all of those were decoy. They made all of that shit up to trace over what was already there. So okay, the Black Duke looked like this. We're gonna take a picture, same pose, just alter it a little bit, but make them look romanticize it, take an artistic license. This is what they do. They even had a, they even had a, what do you call it? A they created a base to be able to set themselves up. Talking about the real ones, right? The real Aryans, because the real Aryans are the Anglos. The Anglos or Angles, those are Moors. Those are not white people. When you hear Anglo-Saxon, you automatically think white people. They are not. These are melanated people who trace their lineage all the way back to the first so-called ancestry that was out there in Europa, the so-called Grimaldi. It's all going to tie in up in a minute. Let me show you. Okay, this is why, because these were our people who before the flood, right, and after the Younger Dryas, after 11,500, these are the ones that was on the other side of everything. We was spared for whatever reason. Because we was here. You understand? We were here. Get the book Algonquin Conquest of the Mediterranean region in 11,500. Like read it and you'll see what I'm talking about. He makes a good exposition in that about this. So wait, let me get this up. Hold on. So boom, these ones was like, word, this is how y'all gonna do it. Y'all gonna basically try to do a whole blitz on Europe. You're gonna try to get rid of all of the Moors in the process, all of the noble Moorish families in the process, and then at the same time, you're gonna try to set up a new history in which now this version of what happened is going to be it. And then we're going to install all these niggas. We're going to install all these white people. And then we basically going to do the whole thing through them. And we think that they're going to actually follow through with this and follow suit. You know what I mean? And they agreed and they went with it. And I think throughout the years, the agreement just changed from different generation to generation, but there's always the same people working the angles, right? So these angles, like I said, or angles, right? This is where you get angling from, right? They established a situation for themselves when they saw all of this happening. So as this war is waging, they start a heavy expedition force, and they start sending their people all around the world to try to secure all of these different ancient so-called Moorish or ancient artifacts, right? That have power, stargates, all these different places, whatever. And while they there, try to link up with the original people of that area, the high priest, the priestesses, or whoever who know what's going on to help them establish it, right? So when the white ones hear that the black ones is doing this, they try to start doing this. You see what I'm saying? And so the intelligence in America, they seeing this going back and forth, and then they looking at it like, well, we need to link up with the white ones, because the white ones were the ones that we had already been working with since we kind of started a variation of the original program in Montauk Point, Long Island. And then they start getting people like Prescott Bush and these people to basically help them facilitate these movements, you know. And then eventually it gets to the point where they are able to bring everybody into the same war. And so, like I said, these so-called Moorish Germans that have so-called American ancestry, they start basically rebelling against the whole situation, and they just get to a point where they're like, you know what, if it's like that, then we just gonna be out. We're gonna let the fake niggas do it for a couple of years, and then we're gonna start messing with them because we're gonna develop the technology over. So that's where New Swabia comes in. Where's New Swabia? Watch how it just go full circle. Okay. New Swabia, right, was an area of the Antarctic explored with the intention to claim it by Nazi Germany between 1938 and 1939 within the Norwegian territorial claim of who Queen Maud land. When you look up who Queen Maud is, she was the ancient so-called Moorish queen that had sway over the Bismarck, the Denmark and the Bismarck family. Okay? The region was named after the exploration ship, the Schwabenland, right? Schwarzer. You know what that means? That means black. That means black, right? Like Mork, mean Moorish, a dark hue, or bountiful land, right? The German region of New Swabia, although the name New Swabia is occasionally mentioned in historical context, is not an officially recognized cartographic name in modern use. See that? Which means what? Nobody could go there, right? It's shut down. The area is now part of Queen Maud Land, governed under what? The Antarctic Treaty System. Wait a minute. New Swabia is divided into an ice-covered northern foreland which gradually rises from the coast at the edge of the ice shelf. So where is it? But beyond or on the ice wall. To the south is followed by a region of Nuntakaks, rising from the ice and mountain ranges and heights over 3,000 meters. This mountain ranges dam up the glaciers of the polar plateau over 2,000 miles an hour. So what these Moors did, again, Hussein and the rest of them, they got their technology up, right? Got their technology game up, got their titles back up, got their people right, and they bounced and they went to that part of Antarctica, right? So it wasn't until Byrd came, right? Byrd is now going, and then he get there, and then what does he say he see? He see all of this ill technology, right? And all of these wild people, right? And this city and all of that. And they tell him that he can't come back. Then allegedly what happens after that? They start Operation High Jump. They start Operation this, right? Because then at the same time, they find out allegedly about the firmament. Why? Because the people there who's using the technology, these are those people. Which means what? These is original people. So guess what? That means all of these orbs and the UFOs and all that shit that you think that's all coming from Area 21, and all of a sudden they just be making planes disappear. They just be messing with these people. That's them. That's them letting these niggas know that y'all don't have control over it all still. So what did all of the nations had to do? Because if all the nations found out that a place like this or places like this existed, set up by these technologically advanced so-called black hole harnessing so-called black people, what's going to happen? Who are using ancient Moorish technology to do it, what's going to happen? The jig is up. So let's do a treaty that say that nobody could get there. Unless for what? Scientific purposes. So what does that mean? That means that they just there trying to barter technology, right? for a longer time to live and a longer time to keep control of everybody else that still think that all of that happened. So while that was happening, the so-called white decoy Nazis, the ones that we know, they then get brought over here through Operation Paperclip. And then they get put into the intelligence agencies. They get put into all of the different elements of government throughout the world, specifically the United States. And then once they do that, they make sure to start establishing situations to not only purposely destabilize and destroy what was left of the so-called Moorish cultures and the self-sufficient Moorish towns and villages and cities that was still flourishing at this time, believe it or not. They then sequester them and get the so-called Negroes to come and start to rock everybody to sleep. Go through the CIA documents that they just dropped about this nigga and see how many times Nuswami will come up. Or just go onto the US files and look it up. This is who's doing it. It ain't them. So they start going in, like I said, they start sending these people in here, getting the $5 Indian peoples to go in under the fake charter now, because they on the reservations, they getting paid by the government, they going along with the fake identity, right? Peace. So it was the US and the German fighting against these folks in Alaska. It was the so-called New Swabian Moors or ancient Mississippian German Tsalagi, whatever you want to call these wars fighting against everybody. Once the war, look what it said. It said it started from 32 to 38. So this is right before the actual war like really popped off. So once they started waging the war against the real ones that they was trying to fight, the real ones just gone. So now they got to keep it going. So this is where the decoy shit come in. See what I'm saying? And whatever's left around that these ones just sniffed around from what them Moors left, what them old Germans left, they were able to then jury rig, reverse engineer, and turn into the stuff that we see today. But even back then, they were saying that World War II was fake. People been saying that shit. Where do you think why do you think the best chocolate in the world come from Norwegian and all that? The most popular candy is the Morenkamp, and it's a bunch of Moors heads. Because we used to hear, the Bavarian chocolatiers, they used to create the chocolate through mystical means. Because it was pure dark chocolate. And you know that's an antioxidant that would heal you, that would heal millions of people. That's why it was sold for all over the empire. So they were fighting, Nazis, Germans, right? But not all of them was the ones that you think. They was really fighting you over there and over here at the same time. They just ain't tell us. Why you think Jackie Owens said that the chancellor was the one that gave him love and what's his name didn't? And the president of the United States didn't. Think about that. All they got to do is show you a different picture. How you know they not showing you the picture of him and Mohammed Hossein? They only show you the one with him in the decoy. But they do that all the time. In real life to this day. How many times you done heard this dude take a picture with Chris Brown and shit and niggas be like, oh, that's not Chris Brown. This is what they've been doing. This is how they maintain control. Look, Scandinavian languages. Danish, Swedish, mork or mork translates to dark or darkness. This can also refer to something of dark color like mork chalkat, which dark chocolate. See? Mork or Mork can also be a surname, often of a Scandinavian origin. See? So you could be Albert Mork. See? Albert the Moor. You could be Christian Mork, right? to be a nickname for someone with dark hair or swarthy complexion. See? Or it can be a habitual, a habitational for a farmstead. Yes, like Mork and Mindy. Yes, yes. Mork who traveled in the soul egg, right? And we used to always give the report to the three giants in the black cloaks, right? Which is the same black cloaks that they said they would wear in the Thule Society ceremonies. Talking about the black ones. They said when they looked up Hitler's DNA, they say he had E1B1. Like Napoleon, E1B1. That's melanated. But again, right? Yeah, remember the Red Baron, World War II, and all of that? The Red Baron. This is the Red Baron. Ahmed Ali. He stayed shooting them down out the sky. And that's his planes. He had a fleet of planes fight for the Moorish Ottoman Turkish Empire. It was the Moorish Empire, and then it transitioned into the so-called Osman Ali Moorish so-called empire, so-called Ottoman. But Ottoman come from Ottoman, right? And then you had the little Ottomans. Then you had the Ottomans. Then you had the Ottoman, right? Who translates to the Ottoman, right? The Ottomans that we know in Turkey, that place didn't become, or they didn't become that until they established the state of Turkey, and that was after they abolished wearing a fez and all of that. So that shows you it was the okie doke. Yeah, so this is the Red Baron. This thing was shooting people out the sky constantly. People, American, US, British, they were scared. The decoy ones. So when we talk about the Axis powers, right, we're talking about those who were fighting, again, along the Axis lines. Right? So you had the Allies and then you had the Axis powers. So the Axis powers were seen as evil, right? And who were they? All the old melanated races, all the old melanated empires under the old Moorish dominion, aka Ottoman or Osman Ali dominion. The so-called Turks, the mystic Turks, right? This is us. Look at these Moors. These is officers right here. These is all, today they call them Afro-Turks, but these are Moorish Turks. These is more. These are Turks who can, again, go all the way back. This is Ahmed Ali, again. Just one of many. It's not like he was the only one either. He was just so above board that he was world renowned. The only white boy that got as much burn as him in terms of warrior wise that wasn't American, other than like MacArthur or Patton, was Rommel from the white German side. And Rommel, the problem with him was he was too good. He was actually fighting the war to win. He didn't know that he was fighting the decoy war for these niggas, and then find out till the end. And then they offered him what they call a Rommel death. Basically, don't blow up the secret. You gotta die, but we'll look out for your family and all that. You understand? The Zionist movement. You heard about that, right? Y'all know what the Zionist movement is, right? The Zionist movement started again with Moors in America. Facts. Actually, Moors in America specifically, and Harlem. This is before, what you call it? This is before Charles Herzl, who was an atheist. Who's an atheist. The atheist got together and told them people, we need to set up our own country. I mean, we need to have our own country for our own people, even though I don't believe, for our own, to practice our own religion, even though I don't believe in the shit. And this nigga got Balfour Rothschild to give him the money to do it. Who money you think that was? That's our money. Taken from our company. I'm gonna show you our companies in a minute. Why we own all this shit. Why the term, what the term, when they read the term Moors are the bailiffs of the 100, I'm gonna just tell you exactly what that is. I'll show you what that is, because you are a shareholder in that. You and I, to this day. That's where the money, the perpetual money, is coming from. We just don't have access to it because of the belligerent trustees. Okay? I can't even remember what I was going to get. Yeah. So, you know there was a Harlem in Germany, right? Y'all know that, right? You know there's a Harlem in Japan? Just like there's a Hawaii in Kenya. See what I'm saying? Like everything is named after some shit that we named over here. That's just how it is, y'all. That's why everybody wound up coming back here, because this is the blessed land. We are the most fortunate. Because no matter how bad your day in America is, other than you leaving the dirt nap, you still having a good day. Yeah. So the Harlems in Germany was connected to the Harlem in thing, and they created their own culture outside of the Weimar Republic, which is why, again, this is where Mohammed and the rest of those real ones, the real Himmler and them people, was actually doing a thing. And then after these people left, they just assumed their identities, made them white. You see what I'm saying? And then started to work on the newly implanted German populace that basically had been there, because all them people was basically German, because they all was Khazarians. So them people went where they was herded to go. That's why they was easy to be led to wherever they was allegedly, because they was already done. Oh wait, that's not it. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, these dudes. This is the army. This is the imperial of the army that they was fighting in World War II. Look at these people. This nigga in the front look like he could be somebody, one of your grandfathers. This is who was fighting. This is who they were going at. These are the so-called Asians and whatever that they said that they was bombing and going and having to destroy. This is what these people look like. This is who they was fighting. At the same time, before there was the so-called state of Israel and all of that, these Moors was here in America, right? With all of the synagogues and all of that. After World War II, when all of the Moors when they started sending these Moors off to fight and all of that, that's when they came in, like they always did, attacked the women, got the women to sign over the properties, do whatever circumstance they could get, and then now they own the synagogues. Then they could use those synagogues, borrow against them, set up pogroms in other countries, whatever, to eventually foster their whole new version of Zionism that they was taking over. The Zionism these Moors was talking about was about resurrecting the true sense of the people. You understand? But you don't hear about this history. They had the Ethiopian Confederation that was also in conjunction with the Moorish Science Temple of America, that was also in conjunction with the Aliendu, the Allah Society, all of the different ecclesiastical groups that had theocratic governments in Harlem were using that as a base outside of that. And what the white man did was use all of the Harlem Renaissance niggas to come in the same way they did during the other Renaissance. Booker T. Washington, aka Teddy Roosevelt, and the rest of them niggas came in there and they made blood oath deals with Carnegie and Mellon and Edison and Madison and what's the other one? JT Morgan and the rest of them niggas. Jacob Astor, right? From the Astor family, who had more money than all of them, he was more connected to the Moorish side, to this side of what I'm saying. Which is why they had to get rid of him in order to set up the Federal Reserve. All of them niggas was passing. None of these people are Caucasian the way that you and I see Caucasian today. That is the play that they use to keep you from seeing these people right here as ex-slaves as opposed to what they really are. Moors, who happen to be Hebrew, at a time, right, when the so-called state of Israel did not exist. These Moors here had all the synagogues in the country. Yeah, dandyism was them importing all of the homosexuals that they had broken from the buck barns and then flooded into the so-called new gay aristocracy to basically become stylists and jesters and shit for the new fake courts that they was establishing. Yeah, that's why anybody that wasn't with it got targeted. Zora Neale Hurston got targeted. See what I'm saying? Because she was about doing for self. She got targeted. No, we're not doing that. We are trying to keep this thing going because we made the deal that only our families would keep the money. The Moors were the ones who were leading the world wars and were winning them. We lost in 1492. That's why we set up the surrender of Granada. Then, between 1492 and the end of the 1500s, we basically reconquered everything because we knew that they was going to violate the surrender of Granada. Because in the surrender of Granada, it basically, if you really sum it up, it basically just said, you get to hold us for a while until we get everything together. That's basically it. And everything else came from that. You dig? So they don't have that. So like I said, the Axis powers, these Moorish armies all over the world was now primed. You see what I'm saying? To put in extra work. And this is where these battles was being fought. But they couldn't let original men go into battle seeing these niggas right here. They couldn't chance it. They couldn't chance that. So they put them against white boys. Then when the white boys go in, boom, they get the land. They get to go to the school to learn how to speak the language. Then the next generation, now they're Germans nationally. Yes, yes, the mandate at the conference, that was the declaration of war. They went to war after that. Right after he got it, came back to America, destabilized the temple, uh, made him change form. Then what happened? Then split the temple up, right? Then by 33, what happened? Everything. They confiscated whose gold? The white people didn't have no gold. They had only land and farm that they had only received a year, maybe 100, maybe 80, 50 to 80 years before that, when they fought to take it from the original people that was there. These Moors was not playing. These niggas was not slaves. None of us was ever that. We was never slaves to nobody. We fell victim, fam, to each other. We got caught up fighting wars against each other, and these niggas came up in the meantime. That's what happened. None of them were ever Caucasian. None of these people ruling ever were Caucasian in the ancient era. That's just not true. All of the pictures that we see of these white people that all look like they was painted by the same person is because they basically were. They'll tell you when you go to Athens and go to Greece and they give you the tours, they tell you most of this was based on recreations, artist recreations who took artistic license. They're telling you none of this is real. These alabaster marble, we just put these here. We have a place called the Gamay in France, and there we put all of this stuff together. And then we present it to you as if it's the history. And then we get people in colleges to write books about it, and then that's it. People don't look beyond their own choices. If you've chosen that the slave narrative is your narrative, then why would you look to see you're beyond that? It doesn't make sense. You're going to accept what they done told you. Our idea of monarchy, again, is also coming from a mixture of our own and how we were integrated into those who came in and merged with us because they could not survive without us. It's not the other way around. Look, in the middle, that's Flavius Oranius. That was the emperor of Rome. On the other side is Edward II, right? Head of the Holy Roman Empire. I saw another picture where they had him listed as Charlemagne, so you could take your pick. Then on the other side is what's his name? From England. This is all Moors. That's like Drake in the middle. You know what I'm saying? We got to get it we got to untwist it in our minds. Once it's untwisted in your mind and you start seeing these old pictures that they keep telling you with slaves and shit like that, you start to realize, no, they're not. These aren't slaves they're showing me. These are pictures of people who were owning everything, who they're calling slaves that were murdered. That's what happened. So, the play was, again, we were invaded by all of these different nations through a successional wave, right? It's after 1492 specifically, because that's when the stronghold fell. And once the stronghold fell, the infrastructure, right, was established in such a way that everybody then went under their own provincial sultan or provincial imperial seat, right? Those seats were governed by individuals who were connected to the original elect, right? Those who had fought in the wars prior to all of this shit happening. You understand? So the people who didn't, who chose not to fight for the empire, a lot of them got banished and wound up in like huts, like living off the land, living like the Siberians in them. Because they wouldn't fight to uphold nothing, they was then shoved out there. And so a lot of them who went back to nature, became totally agrarian, forgot how to read and all that, a lot of them would get enslaved. Because what? They were stateless. And then those that wanted their freedom from the enslavers who were using them to fight us, they then would teach them their language. They would have to adopt their God. You understand? And then once they take control of everything, now their God, their way becomes the way that they govern their society. You understand? That's how you bring a people to heel. You remove the landmarks that that remind them of who they are and were, which is direct violation of so-called biblical law. It says, remove not thy neighbor's landmark from thy station so that he knows. You see, once they do that, like right now, where you live right now, if I was to come into your whole neighborhood and take all the street lights off, all the street signs off for about a mile around where you live, would you really know how to get back to your crib? Then what happens if, okay, you get back to your crib under that circumstance? What happens then if I go and then I go bomb up everything? I then go put bombs in everything, and now there's no landmark for nothing. You don't know where to go. So this is what they did with Harlem. This is what happened. This is why all of the businesses and everything was owned again, was connected to Black Hitler and them. And the Axis powers was running shit. And they was running all of that throughout the world. To the point where the Japanese government started trying to get audience with them. So they sent people who could holler for real, but instead the FBI and these niggas, what they did was they tried to hook it up and put their agents in to mess up the meeting. So that's how Elijah Muhammad and them got caught up in that, where they thought that they was involved with them niggas like that. See what I'm saying? Because again, Black Hitler and them niggas was serious. They was not playing. They had a lot of shit on lock. Like all of that underworld stuff that you think was run by these so-called black mobsters, that's the aftermath. These are the people who were able to pick on the bones of everything that happened after it was all done. See what I'm saying? Like I said, Bumpy was just trying to hold up what was left of what they had set up. But, you know, by the time Frank come in, you already know the story to play on that. How Frank did everybody. So, as you see, in the end, they just break it down. But what happened around the time that the Creole Empire was basically flourishing, they created a agreement with Queen Elizabeth that they could set up their own regency, which would basically be like a vice royalty or vice admiralty, or more vice royalty, in which these Moors would basically run all of what you call Louisiana today, unimpeded. You know what I'm saying? And that was basically going to go down, and that was backed by Elizabeth and the Sultan of the world at that time, who they call the great governor of the world. When you read in the end of the Articles of Confederation, he gave his blessings to it. These are Moors in America. Okay. This is who Queen Berenice, when she was talking about Louis and Anna Maria. This is when it was all here. So they set up what they call the Regency of Old France. Big up to the Angry Chief. I found this online, and it fit what we talking about. The Regency of Algiers is an early modern semi-independent Ottoman province of and nominal vassal state on the Barbary coast of North Africa from where 1516 to 1830. So that's the Atlantic coast. The Barbary coast is the Atlantic coast. When they brought all the ships over here, whatever, where you think they was bringing them through? The Atlantic coast is the Barbary coast, because North Africa is North America, because that's the northern portion of so-called Africa. Founded by the privateer brothers Argeru Hereditary Reese, also known as the Barbarossa brothers. The Barbarossa brothers, the regency succeeded in the kingdom of Tsclaves, right, as the infamous formidable base that waged the maritime holy war on the European Christian powers. Elected regents headed a statocracy that haunted the European imagination for 3 centuries, but still gained recognition as a regional power. This was the power. The Ottomans was coming out of Tuscarora, aka Turkey, aka North Carolina. They was holding it down, and they were the ones, the mystic Turks, that was going through and shutting all of these fake protectorates and all of that down. And it wasn't until the beef came between the Napoleon and Bookman and them that everything started fracturing in the Creole Empire. So that way, by the time Dessalines comes in, he now has to basically hold together the unification that they all fought to have. Because Haiti, or Haiti as it stands, was an empire within itself. However, they, as their own monarchy, didn't want to accept, even through marriage, the duchyship of the German regions, right? These Germans is not Caucasian people. These Germans is literally Germans, Moors, right? And so that regency, you see the flag, right? Ain't Algiers in Louisiana, right? Ain't Algiers in Louisiana, right? Right. But see how they flip it, they show you the shit over there, right? But what you got to remember is that each one of these so-called Moorish groups or clans were connected or are connected to an indigenous so-called remnant or tribe. So because Bonaparte was a Moor, see, and said Napoleon Bonaparte, alias Jaffa Bonaparte, see, Jaffa Bonaparte, alias Opium Bonaparte, alias Whitworth Bonaparte, alias Acre Bonaparte, see? See, this nigga's an actor. Yeah, man names. It was all over the place, right? Uh, was Corsican, because this is why this is the flag of Corsica, but it was the original flag of Haiti. But they took the Corsican flag and created a whole nother branch. See what I'm saying? After everything gets flipped. Dark hair with eyes brown, resembles a great deal in person, a bear leader of one of the Savoyards. Who are the Savoyards? The Savoyards are the nobles of the House of Savoy. Who is the House of Savoy? The House of Savoy is the ancient nobility of so-called Italy or Rome. Who is that? That's the Orsini. That's the Selassie. See what I'm saying? So they're showing you his duchy connection shit. Who is really funding the whole thing? The Romans through the Italians through the Ethiopians, who are posing as Venetians, see, and Florentines and what you call it, Lombards and shit like that. But these are all Moors under different names. Yeah, they all passing. That's how the Creoles was able to get over. Because they started to see the play. They say, yo, okay, they using these white people like that. We not only going to create them, we're going to create a whole class of them. And then we're going to use them to get the Spanish to become French. And they did. The term Latino come from Ladino or Ladino, which is French. Because they suckered all the mulattoes into thinking that they were a separate group of people. Because they weren't. But they use the race thing. That's why I said get the book, The Blue Vein Society. Gets into all of this. Go another book, Color in the Ancient World. Gets into all of this type of shit. But what you got to remember is what I just showed you is that the Regency of Algiers was in control of all of the ports and all of the commerce between the Atlantic coast, up and down, from Alaska to Chile, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. You see, we're proving it. And these Moors who on land, they're referring to some of them as Algonquin, right? These are Moors as we know them. Remember, King George and them were Germans. George and Charlotte were Germans, but they were Moors. You understand? In the context that they were of the Schwaffen. Like we said, our problem is we think that English mean white. And that British means those who are under the contract, the Baratain, right? They are the ones that's the men of the contracts. They are the ones that was enslaving everybody. They were the Moors. That's why they called them the brutish Moors. Or the British, the ones who held everybody under the contracts. You had to do what you say you was going to do. If you say you're going to pay this more, or he's going to take everything that you have. But just because you paying this more, that don't mean if this more come for money, you don't got to pay him either. Because y'all don't have the right to have nothing, because you descend from the people who killed Yeshua. So y'all niggas is forever cursed. You understand? So y'all always got to pay money. You always got to pay money. That's just the dower that you niggas got to pay because you did that. And he was our brother. So in honor of our brother, we are going to hold it down. There were more Christians in the Moorish Empire than there were Muslim Moors. Think about what I'm saying, man. The Dutch are Moors. I'm going to show you that in a minute too, man. The Dutch, all of that is Moors. The Dutch is basically Tsclaves, Ananoias, Wabanakis, Montakas, who these people are. All of those are Moorish terms. These are old Moorish names. Anything with a Z in it, anything like that, that's Moorish. AL, that's Moorish. Y'all niggas wasn't even speaking vowels. Didn't they tell us that Sequoia didn't even create, they didn't even have languages. They didn't even write nothing down. Didn't they say that? They didn't write nothing. That they didn't read, they didn't write. So how did y'all niggas build everything? How did y'all niggas create all of these castles and stuff? You didn't do that. We did that. We did it. We did it. We maintained it. We refurbished it. We kept the commerce going. Y'all was selling y'all shit for beads and shit. Y'all niggas was stupid. Y'all niggas was letting Moors just come up in there and be like, look, y'all not using this right. Y'all gotta do something about this. You know what I mean? But if Nino Brown do it, it's cool, right? Nino Brown do it in a movie, it's cool. Moors do it, it's a problem. Moors do it and establish civilization. Keep these crackers and these Mongolians and these people from always taxing you and shit. There's something wrong with us. No. Y'all don't get it both ways, man. All that canoes, TPs, all of that, we that's what the uncivilized people and the people who again didn't fight in the wars, didn't help, didn't create no arms for the poor, didn't look out for the orphans being thrown into slavery by the mulatto Corsican Spanish, didn't help the Chichimeca fight against Cortez or whoever else was down there, didn't help Santa Anna and the niggas fight to get the Alamo. Y'all niggas didn't do nothing. Y'all niggas just hid. Y'all niggas just stayed on the plantation with no chains on your legs. Y'all just sat there, watched one Negro white man rip this black man to death, ain't do nothing. Rip this black man apart, just stood there and didn't do nothing because y'all in shock. Because y'all wasn't from here like that. Y'all was part of the invasion forces. Y'all just came from different countries. The Portuguese employed Congo mercenaries to come over here and do shit. And when they got over here and seen they was fighting the people that looked like them, and the Portuguese being of lighter skin, seeing what happened, a lot of them turned tides against the Portuguese. And in that, the Moors saw that they had some sort of fight in them and then allowed them to establish little communities for themselves here and didn't charge them duer. Who's doing that? That's how you get Congo Square. In what you call it? I forget the state right now. So at the close of 1492, the reason why we was able to set up the whole thing, just like the Vietnam, we set up what was called the Barbary Company. The Barbary Company, or what? The Morocco Company, or a Barbary Company, was a trading company established by the Sultan of Morocco and Queen Elizabeth I of England in when? 1585, after we won the wars, and through a patent granted to the Earls of Warwick and Leicester. Right? Leicester and Lancaster are the same thing. She wound up having a baby with this Moor. She had a baby with him, and that baby went on to be known as Sir Francis Bacon. His father, the Sultan, then took him and sent him to Morocco over here in Fez, Philadelphia, to study amongst the Marabouts Moors, right? The niggas who taught Washington and them, who were Huguenots at the time, and they and taught them the Sufic order of the Rose. Then he went back into Europa and set up what became the Rosicrucian order, which eventually fell back under the jurisdiction of an American Moor, aka the illustrious Prince Pascal Reveille Randolph Bey. But then eventually it was wrestled from him at the close of his tenure. So all companies, right, start from the Barbary Company. We're under the Barbary Company. So when you talk about the British East India Company, the British West India Company, all of that came because of the relationship between Queen Elizabeth and the Moors, because Queen Elizabeth was a German Moor. Over here, you have the so-called clans or tribes, how they are biblically, right, as well as how they are in terms of so-called autochtonship. Sisiska, Blackfoot. Yamasee, that's basically Maya. Seminole is Seminole. The Esquimalt is the Muskogees, right? Anytime you hear Ghee, like Portuguese or Cherokee or Ghee, like that, that's Moorish. That's Old French and so-called Portuguese, right? The Choctaw is the Choctaw. The Chickasaw is the I forget the real name for Chickasaw. Yeah, the Chickasha, right? And then lastly, you got the Tsalagi, right? And in that, you get the different houses. So you have the Alawite, the Saadite, right? The Watasid, the Marinid, the Almohad, the Almoravid, and the Idrisid. Under that, then you get the Alis, the Allahs, the Pashas, the Ali Day Bay, you know the rest. Then you get from there the Archites, the Zamorites, the Sidonites, the Amorites, the Sinites. The Sinites is the Asiatics, is the Asians, so who they call it Tartaries or whatever. Hamathites, Jebusites, right? All working in harmony. This is the time that they didn't want us to get back, because now we're seeing where all the money. I'm showing you where the Federal Reserve, where the United States money, where all this money is coming from, and it was all housed at Switzerland. Where is your boy right now making the deal at with China? Switzerland. That's right, because the old Pope dead, which means that the door for the money is open. Because remember, the Pope's army is the Swiss army. Remember? They're the ones who guard the banks. So when this nigga showed himself dressed as the Pope, what was he showing you? Remember they posted that image of Trump in the Pope AI? Remember that? All that money got to get brought back. This is the fulfillment of the prophecy of the Moors. I'm telling you, all of this is about us getting all of the bread back. Everybody just want it in their lifetime. We greedy. We want to see everybody. No, it don't work like that. We Moors, we work on generational plans. Generational plans, B. Look how long it took that to manifest. So the Sultan of Morocco, which was America, going all the way back to Moulay Ismail, right, who had over 800 kids. He's the one who basically became, again, the Sultan of America, and then presided over them, being able to break away from the British. But they did not break away from the crown. That's why they still had to pay. Understand? They still had to pay because they were still a part of the crown. They just were not obligated to the British anymore, meaning the British crown. And in the exchange was that they would receive the British crown would receive certain stipends and shit based upon their ancient relationship. Because the British, again, the Anglemen, those are Moors. That's why when the Moors left Spain over there, they gave Gibraltar to who? The British. The British still own Gibraltar in the name of the Moorish Empire. Why do you think Britain is trying to become Muslim now? It's just that the pale Arabs then hijacked the relationship because the Moors over here ain't following their proper jurisdictional boundaries. But everything happened in time. We're gonna figure it out. What we got to get away from is all of this useless bickering with people who had no culture, who was constantly getting preyed upon, who's constantly referring themselves as slaves and the slave dialect and shit. Like, we wasn't the ones doing that. We was the ones breaking y'all out of slavery, and then y'all put yourself back in slavery by making deals with these niggas when we told y'all not to do that. And then they told you, if you become an Indian, we'll give you this property. If you become an African, we'll give you this property. And y'all niggas did it. And then taught your children to do that. Also, you could get money. We didn't do that. We fought against all of that. We still fighting against all that. So look at this. So then boom. So when we saw the region of Algiers, that's all of Louisiana going all the way up into Canada, all the way down into Mexico. When we talk about the Beylik of Tunis, we talk about the Beyliks of Tunis, meaning all of Tennessee, everything west and east of that. Okay? Because these guys, again, were connected through that old Osman Ali bloodline faith thing. This was a state, Beylik of Tunis was a state in modern day Tunisia, right? Tunisia. Tennessee, same place, officially part of the Ottoman Empire, but functioning what? As an independent entity, the Husainid dynasty. This is the ruler who ruled the Beylik of Tunis from when? 1705 to 1781. So this was the Sultan that gave them the okay to establish the United States of America. Do you understand? This is the Sultan of the world right here. This nigga right here. And he did that because there was a split, because the old Algonquin confederacies of the Haudenosaunee, the Sioux, and the Algonquin language branches, they decided to change their government. And they got tired of fighting these amalgamated people since 1492, so they decided to create a limited form of branch government that they could run codependently, right? And in that, they would basically be the administrators for the government that preceded it. That's us. And so they came in as custodians. George Washington, the Huguenot, they did not hand it over to some white man. Washington was a Huguenot, which means he was so-called melanated, a Moor, because the Huguenots were the Moors who went to southern France and then populated all of the so-called Barbary Coast, aka the Atlantic coastline, all in South Carolina, North Carolina, because they were a part of something called the Carolingian dynasty. Islam, the Carolingians. This is a group of Moors, again, French-speaking Moors, Creole-speaking Moors, who after the wars decided to come back to their ancestral home, and they came here, those that could, in South Carolina. Yes, the South Carolinians, because they could just check they lineage all the way back to Charles V, who married into the Inca bloodline, becoming the 25th Inca emperor. And then from there, he was allotted land up here that became known as Carolina. Carolina got split into two halves, the North and the South. And all of his people now that wanted to be a part of his union would then be able to go there because they were subjects of Charles. That's why they created the Sundry Free Moors Act, where in South Carolina, that says only Moors who are subject of the Sultan, right, are free from all of the Negro shit. The Negro shit is all of the white slave codes that was on the white European slaves and the African and Asian and Siberian Eurasian prisoners of war. That's why Morocco, right, which is Fez, which is Philadelphia, was right there. So in 1881, France established a protectorate over Tunisia, placing it under French control. Don't they speak French? Don't they speak French in Louisiana? Don't they? Don't they say it was owned by the Spanish? Then they say it was owned by the French. Then they say it was owned by the United States. Right? Didn't they tell you that? Yeah. Yeah. So we just proved it right here. This is in America. This ain't over there. The last Bey of Tunis was also the king and first and only king of Tunisia after the country gained independence. When? In 1956. That means that the king of Tennessee, the Moorish king, the Moorish Bey of Tennessee, lost their independence in 1956. The same year they started the civil rights movement. The same year they set up the Kingdom of Morocco. The same year they brought out your boy Martin Michael Luther King and these niggas to move everybody into the fake nationality shit, the black African slave shit. See? See? So these are Americans. So when they say, well, who's the king, who's the Sultan of America? Right here. This is them right here. This is what they look like. These are Moors. These are not Indians. See, he got a Moorish scabbard. Where was Indians getting? What Indian tribe was smelting iron? That was sleeping in wiki ups all day. Come on, man. You have a glorious, eccentric past that nobody can hide forever. And the jig is up, bro. We done figured it out. Y'all niggas is all agents of destruction and misinformation, man. Muslim is American. The Confederacy is American. Everything is American, man. That means something. You know what I mean? Everything else is cap. You know what I'm saying? Look, this is what I'm saying, Morris. We are the ones. We are the Confederacy. Us. It ain't them. It's never been them. It's never been nobody but us. But everybody came, like I said, and invaded us at the same time in waves. And when we repel one, we hit the other. So once the stronghold fell or was signed over illegally, everybody gets disenfranchised and niggas start going for self. But what it does do is it creates a whole culture of rebellion and barbarousness that we still dealing with. This is in Brooklyn, man. It's in Brooklyn. The Bronx is named after Moors. Okay? The Bronx come from, or the Bronx used to be known as Morrisania. Morrisania. I don't know if y'all know that. The Bronx River used to be called the Bronx River because of the Dutch Moor that first moved there. His name was Bronx. And then he moved his family there and his indentured servants there and started building up the river. Then after a while, he wound up, he didn't have no kids. He died. So then the estate went to the Bay. And then it wasn't until years later it changed hands. It wound up going to a new Englishman more named William Morris, the same William Morris that signed the Declaration of Independence. That William Morris. That William Morris then carved out a place for the new capital, for the new country that they was going to build, incorporate, see, which would be the United States for America before the corruption, before it was usurped. And then he pledged the land, to his land, to be the land that they was going to do it on, right? That land was called Mauritania. There you go. And we know it already had castles and shit on it. So Morrison is Moorish son. So they'll show you a picture of a white man, but it's not. He was a Moor, like all the rest of them. Yeah, so the Bronx River, all of that is old Morrisonia, or excuse me, Morrisania. Wait, let me get this stuff so I can show you. Another place that the Moors was a giant trade route was a place in North Carolina where the Catawba Moors used to build and used to trade with all of the other Moors. It was called Trade and Triumph. It's still there. It was the ancient trading hub, going all the way back to the days of the Bible. And the Moors would travel from the four corners because all of the four roads meet right there. So when you go there today, all under North Carolina are gold mines. They're all mines all over. And then under that are the underground cities that the Moors built when they were extracting the mines. So we would not only extract stuff from out the ground, we would create infrastructure underground and then create the cities that these niggas would eventually get into. That's how I know we eventually gonna get them all back. All these bunkers and shit they building, that's all gonna go back to the people. They're not gonna have the ability to use none of that. See? Yeah, indeed, more. Fornix or Fornia means where they kept the gold. That's why Trump is trying to audit the Fort Knox to make sure the gold's still there. Yeah, they went back. They brought all of the gold from the Vatican. That's what the Switzerland deal is about. That's why China got to back off. That's why you ain't been hearing nothing about the brick shit. Remember the brick shit? That's still in effect, but that's not really popping the way they think now because now America gonna have gold behind its money again. What they gonna do then? So yeah, see, the Moorish property, present-day Mauritania, was partitioned and leased to farmers, many of whom used slave labor prior to the abolition of slavery. So the slave labor they used is white people. Mauritania remained partially populated until the early 1800s. See, when the Moorish family allowed the railroad, see, to extend across the property. See, so this was here when Mr. Morris and all them niggas got here. This was the infrastructure that was already here. They would just rent it, like I said, from the thing. So all of the Bronx River, all of that used to be Mauritania. Like I said, Trade and Triumph, that's where they used to, in North Carolina, that's where we did all of the trading. Then we would bring it to the Barbary Coast, right under Mount Arabia in Georgia. Islam. All of these names, Kickapoo, Chickapoo, Kickapasa, all that's Moorish. It's only Indian in name only. And that name is a word of art. Doesn't it really exist the way that we think it do? It was a construction of the Spanish. Okay, so that's that. This, they got pictures, they got engravings. This is what I'm saying. So the reason why I brought Moulay Ismail up is because when he moved the capital from Fez, he moved it to Mecca, which is to us Chicago, and he liked it there better because he had access to all of the to the rivers that y'all got over there. So when you go through Chicago, it's old. That's Mecca for real, for real. All of them ancient buildings and shit. They, even the ones that they tore down, but on the side of the building, they got a copy of the Enuma Elish. Enuma Elish. Look, why would these people carve the Enuma Elish in the side of a building in Chicago? Like, think about it more. It's like, come on, man. Like, the jig is up already, man. So that's why the Heil Hitler thing is such a big situation, you see, because what that does is it creates a counterpoint to the programming that has attacked. Because what this dude was doing is what this dude, he was attacking all of the Ashkenazi Jews, getting their properties and then giving them to the Hebrews. And then what happened was they launched a coup because the Hebrews used to own the Abyssinian Baptist Church. They had that first. It was not a church. It was a temple. Then after the wars of Harlem and all that stuff happened, they let all the white people in. That's when they started to switch it up, and they brought all of them niggas in and gave it to the white Christian Baptist Freemasons. So all of these UFOs that you see targeting these people and flying around and all of that, we always thinking aliens and aliens. No, this is them old Moors, these German Moorish Swabians that bounced and then left them holding a bag in the war. And then they had to create this whole alternate reality with this white Hitler and then use the technology of what they thought the Black Sun shit was using and then try to use that as a means to control everybody from that point on. Put all of them people into government, which means that the United States government been basically a fake Fourth Reich since the day the fake Hitler died peacefully at that spot in Argentina. And that they were so demonic because they were the opposite side of what Muhammad Hassan, the real Himmler, and the rest of them niggas was really doing. Because again, they were connected to the ancient Axis royalty that was connected to these Moorish scientists that was tapped into the Black Sun technology that allowed them to tap into the singularity to create artifacts and orbs and shit like that, and all of that from their base. Their base was so fortified that all of the governments in the world came to invade them, and they shut all of them down with that Antarctic Treaty. And they've been keeping us away from them ever since. But they've been coming through, messing with them to let us know that the opposite is things. So the Israel propaganda was great because it kept everybody under the old illusion of what they tell you that the World War One was about, World War Two was about. When really that's a temporal time splinter, that time sphincter that's keeping you locked around one side of how the war went. That's why there's so many movies about World War II. That's why there's so many books about World War II. But there's niggas that was fighting in it that don't even know what they was fighting in it for or who they was really fighting. To this day, the History Channel was owned by a descendant of the SS. That's why you was seeing Nazi propaganda on that shit all the time. So now that they done Nazi'd the world up, made everybody think, what you think will happen now when they find out about the Black Hitlers? Because it was more than one. And like I said, they were the Axis powers that was moving against everything to the point that the FBI and everybody had to get involved. The Cape and Turban, see? Black Hitler was a Chicago community organizer who moved to New York. See? Chicago. See? The Moors. Somewhere along the way, he picked up a gold-lined cape, a purple turban, a stepladder, which he used to speeches outside of Jewish stores owned by the Harlem's dwindling Jewish community. See? See? He was kicking the white Jews out, putting the so-called Hebrew Moors in, and then creating business alliances with them as a protectorate to keep Dutch Schultz and the rest of them niggas from coming in and getting that money. See? Cape and turban was sometimes combined with a Nazi-style, military-style and pants and jack boots along with a fez, completing the uniform of a man who is remembered today as a pioneering labor leader. See? But was known back then as the Black Hitler. A dagger thrust through his belt completed the ensemble. What nigga is able to stand at a police arraignment with a Moorish knife in his belt next to the police? You tell me that. You tell me that, Morris. How come that we ain't make no TV show about this? That's a Moorish dagger. This nigga knew what he was doing. Black Hitler styled himself as Sufi Abdul Hamid when he opened his mosque. He front-loaded his name all the way up with His Holiness Bishop Amaru Al-Mu'minin. Sufi A. Hamid. See? The year was 1932. When did I tell you New Swabia and all of that was popping off? See, I think they killed this nigga, and this nigga wound up crashing the plane or getting out of that and wound up going up top with the rest of them. Yes. See? These Moors was putting in work, had the whole community on lock. See? The judicial crackdown on Hamid's labor extortion progress refocused his attention on his mosque, but they couldn't lock him up. How come he never went to jail? See? He married Queenie. See? Queenie St. Clair. She was a St. Clair. The St. Clairs are the Sinclairs. The Sinclairs are one of the richest Moorish noble families that you just look up net worth of the Sinclair family. They're going to show you white people, but I'm telling you, these is the real people. These is the Moors who ran Harlem's numbers racket. Their marriage, however, ended badly when Queenie shot him, but failed to kill him. Hamid married again, brought a private plane, and obscene luxury at a time when most think that he didn't even have enough to eat. Think about that. This nigga had his own. What Negro in the 30s had his own plane in Harlem? He was well financed. He was a part of the Axis powers. He was a part of the whole thing that was happening to save Harlem from the homosexuals and the degenerate boulets that was being funded by the NAACP, which was being funded by the ADL, which was being underwritten by the B'nai B'rith, which at that time was a terrorist organization, just like Lehi and the rest of them that they imported into Palestine to establish the so-called state of Israel after. This is Moorish history, y'all. This is the stuff that they don't want us to do the knowledge to. They rather us watch BMF and the rest of these niggas instead of finding that. Although I hear they're gonna put Jerry Lewis Bay in the BMF joint. So it's gonna be interesting to see how they try to flip that. And see if they're going to try to tie him to the greater Moorish science. But you should get Jerry Lewis Bay's book though, and peep that. It's hard. It gets into all of the stuff I'm telling you now. He talk about some of it. During the last 4 months of the Mayan year of Revelation, several books along the report access to genealogy will be what happened? The interpretation. The tribe was now the vassal. See, that tied the interior corridor of the southern colonies that was never settled by peoples from across the Atlantic and had always been occupied by the indigenous tribe of Moors called the Ananui or the Tsclaves, so-called Cherokees, which was actually created by the British Crown, see, at the beginning of the 18th century. So because the British Crown started referring to these people, the Tsclaves, as Cherokees, the people who answered to the name Cherokees then fell under the jurisdiction as lead subjects under George and not the clan or the nationality that they was already in. You see, this is where the problem started. Because then those that called Cherokees, they would receive more British crowns and then they could do more business. You see what I'm saying? But that business also was being taxed back to George, which then depleted or was taken away from the global fund of the people that was already here. The Moors that wasn't lead subjects to him. Great Britain had the right to claim all of North America westward to the Mississippi River. That's because the Sultan gave them jurisdiction over that to act as guardians over the land to stop the incursions that was coming in from the east through the Bering Strait and all of that shit. See what I'm saying? Great Britain had the right to claim, boom, the Moors, i.e. Lenni Lenape, Nanticoke, Narragansett, Delaware, interpretation of many 17th century Native American archaeological sites, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Muskogee or Maya words. Yeah, from the Southern Highlands. So yeah, this one is real deep. It gets into a lot of that. But yeah, Tuscarora, Turkey, that's all America. That's all here. Those are the Barbary states, the Barbary powers. The whole Regency of Algiers, when it finally got invaded, they tried to do it. It was the Barbary pirates that stopped the invasion. Matter of fact, they do a parade every year to a Moorish pirate named Lafitte. Lafitte was the one that came in and stopped them from burning down the ports and all of that. Yes, we set up protectorates for everybody and then created the star forts to protect the protectorates. Like we was no joke, we was all over. And then you had ones that was just out here doing shit for everybody else, being groomed and coming up with them. Like here go Savoy, here go your boy Selassie, young Selassie, here with one of the Rothschilds at their summer house. See what I'm saying? Because the Selassie is a part of the papal bloodlines. Because they're Orsini, they like the Orsini, and they're both Savoy, right? Savoy, that's the Ethiopian Italian connection, which ties them to Napoleon. Yeah, Lafayette. Yeah, it's old Creole Moorish. The Marquis de Lafayette was Washington's Canadian counterpart. Washington again being a Huguenot, which means he was not white. I don't know who that white man is showing us, and that thing is. Yeah, the 13 colonies, yes, indeed. More the 13 colonies was set up by the Moorish families as a trust with the 13 presidents and presidents. That's right. That's right. And then they merged themselves into a country. And then that country then became part on the corporate side under the Barbary Company. But then after they broke the Moors, after the 1900s, after the Great Wars and all of that, by 1900, they reincorporated as the Virginia Tobacco Company. And then from the Virginia Tobacco Company, it becomes the Charleston, Cincinnati, and Chicago Railroad Company. And then When World War II and all that start, they incorporate that as an outside agency called the OSS. Then after it becomes the OSS, they reinvested in America to start taking over the mainland and reestablish it as the CIA. And here we are. You know what I mean? But essentially, like I said, all of this was run by the Moorish Empire, specifically out of what the old Moors, like Brother Hakim Bey and others, referred to as the House of Burgess, out of Britain. Excuse me, old Fez, excuse me, old America, and that's how they run it, or how we ran it, I should say. But everybody was Moorish up until that point. And when I say Moorish, it may not be Moorish in the sense that they were practicing as Moors, but you have Christians who, albeit not Moors, i.e., Muslims, still adhere to Moorish nationality. So they would keep their Christian name, but then keep their Il or Bey as well. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So the Hanovers, all that shit, all the people is melanated. None of these people became that. Like I said, after Reconstruction, that's when everything switched up. That's why they keep talking to us about the European side of everything and not the native side of everything. I'm trying to think. Anybody have any questions? There's so much more, but I'm not going to be able to get into all of it now. But I wanted to really show and prove, get into the Hitler thing, because that's why it is. So when you hear that song, just understand what you're hearing. You're hearing, you understand? It's not what you think it is. It's doing the opposite of whatever they say is doing the opposite of that. It's breaking down these little these fake hidden vassals that they got out here. You know what I mean? But yeah, the original Germans, Al Germania, all of that is Moorish. None of it is Caucasian. It only becomes Caucasian after way years later. So the people that's there now are the people that have been placed there after World War II, World War III. When they start talking about their family was there for 200 years and all that, that may be true. But the person whose name that your great 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 grandmother adopted, that's your tie to it. You don't got no blood connection to that land. You ain't built none of them vineyards. You ain't do none of that shit. And the only reason why you know how to do it now is because y'all are the ones who stole all of the shit and then kept control of it up until now. So when they talk about the Nazi movement and all of that, that was all a twofold situation. We only hear about the second ones. The first ones they was not able to capture. They was not able to beat. And now they back. So now they coming up with all types of shit, telling you that they aliens, telling you that they from the water, telling you all of this shit. But what if it actually is the shit I'm telling you? It make more sense than everything else. You understand? Anybody have any questions? Yeah, the new pope is Haitian. He's Creole. He been passing. He a DJ, and he also covered up some pedophilia stuff while he was in office. So to me, he represents the ringer, because he's a Leo and JD Vance is a Leo, and they saying JD Vance was the one that did him in the first time they saw him, so it would make sense. Anybody else? Yeah, I'm closing now. I'm closing right now. Yeah, Zorro was a Moor. He was a Don. All of the Dons in ancient Mexico, those were the Moors. The peasants were the Zambos and the people who had been captured as prisoners of war from the wars they was fighting against the Moors in Peru and all of that. It wasn't until they set up the fake thing after getting rid of Zapata and all that, paying him to come in and just wreck shop and do all the shit he did, was when they was able to set it up and then put the white Italian niggas in control. You know what I'm saying? So lastly, the Harufi or the Hanafi were the Moors. When we talk about the 5%ers and all of that, these were the Moors who were keeping the seven and all of that stuff alive. After uh, Muhammad, Mullah Ishmael went on his foreign campaigns when he took over. Mullah Ishmael from America set a campaign up into so-called West Asia over there and took over Azerbaijan, Persia, Iran, and Iraq. Set up a dominion of all of that and set up a dominion of Moors from over here, over there to hold them all down. A lot of those Moors were Hanifis or what they call Harufis, and they follow what they call Harufism. Harufism, he became acquainted with the founder of the extremist religious sect, the Harufis, the Iranian mystic Fatal Ali Asrabad, who was flayed to death for his heretical beliefs. Harufism was based on a Kabbalistic philosophy associated with the numerical significance attributed to the letters of the alphabet and their combinations. That, brothers and sisters, is the supreme mathematics and the supreme alphabet that the nation of Gaza Earth was talking to us all about back in the days. Because the nation of Gaza Earth, the NOI, and all of that came out of the Moorish Science Temple. The Axis powers, I'm seeing all of this stuff was sparked off by what the prophet did. And we are lucky and should be humbled to the idea that we are the inheritors of all of this rich history and the bounty that has to come back to us. Because when God forbid these niggas start coming through doing, you see what I'm saying? We know who we are in it. So if they're coming from the hollow earth, the inner earth, beyond the ice wall, whatever, we know about this now. We know about Swabia. We know why you don't let nobody in Antarctica. We know about all that shit. Because those are the black people who landed at the Air Force Base in the 50s in the cigar-shaped ships who look like they ain't never been conquered and said that if you keep doing what you're doing, we're going to be back. When we come back, we're not playing. We in that time now. So if the aliens come and they don't look like us, and they gonna know us because they know how they left. They know what it was when we left. You know what I'm saying? But we are the inheritors of all of this. The whole fight was about us. You know what I'm saying? Coming back in control and flipping the earth back on its axis, i.e. the axis power. You know what I mean? That's why your boy, remember this? Remember this song? Remember this? That's why your boy came out with this album. And they had to get rid of him after. Because it started waking y'all up again. Remember? Remember Axis is bold as love? Remember when Jimi Hendrix played the American anthem at the joint? You could listen to that and get charged. Just like you could listen to that Hail Hitler shit and get charged. It has the opposite effect of whatever you're saying, especially when you're not a racist. And think about it. This song, imagine if a bunch of KKK niggas start playing this song. Do you realize they're going to be playing a song about Black Hitler? You understand they're doing a song about black, they will be chanting a song made by a Moor from Chicago celebrating black Nazism and Black Hitler. I'm not talking about racist Nazism. I'm talking about high accessing the black hole sun Nazism. That's the shit. That has nothing to do with the other shit. That's why they never told us about Muhammad Hussein. That's why they never told us about the real science on that. So think about the psychological aspect of that. And ever since then, Israel been falling. The bills that they've been trying to pass for Israel, they all in the garbage now. It's all over. It's all crashing. Because all they had to do was tell this nigga Trump, you know this nigga Netanyahu playing like a punk. What? That was it. He stopped taking this nigga calls. It's over. Gravy train done. They don't already let out the bag, the They were the ones for 9/11. They were the ones for JFK. They were the ones for Oklahoma. They were the ones for. It's over. It's falling apart. So we're in the best position we could be in because we know who the real Germans are, who the real Moors are, who the real Indians are. We ain't got to worry about none of this other shit they playing, trying to play niggas with. So don't go out there chanting. They trying to get everybody caught up in racial shit again. Leave that shit alone, man. Leave it alone. The man already showed you what's happening. The homie killed my son. I went and go kill the cop. That's it. Checkmate. That's it. I ain't saying two wrongs don't make it right, but hey, a damn sure make it even. So yes, Moors, this is what's going on. We have not only armies of angels at our behest, ready to come in and do shit, but we were the original so-called. All of that was happening here in America. Any other questions? This, like I said, other Moors have gone in on this as well. Brother Paris, brother Shikamaga, him specifically, he go crazy on this shit. I just wanted to retouch on it, just based on all of the old joint that I did and people's interest in that. A lot of people telling me they're going back and watching it, and seeing shit in it. So I really appreciate that. I need to go back and watch it my damn self. See. See, look. And they let them out. 50 people showed up, man. When there was no internet to tell niggas what was happening. Niggas held him down and got him out because he had things to do. He's a part of the old Moorish military, the Moorish Axis powers that still exist, that's still here. Don't let them fool you. When they look like this, these are Moors. Those are Moors. See the uniform white, right? All white with black feathers, black helmets. Real quick, just to show you some fighters before we close. Yeah, you can email me at houseofl@hotmail.com. I might have to do a part 2 to this to get more into the technology. Yeah, happy Mother's Day to all of the queens. Big up to brother Bomb J Rockwell. He put me on today. Mother's Day was started by Moors. Out of America. Came out of America. Right here on your left is the Chichimeca, the Moors that shut down the conquistadors, the Jewish, the Hebrew mercenary, savage conquistadors, mulatto conquistadors. And then on your left is people from the islands of the Antilles. These Moors were called Americans, Merikinz, because they were American kings from the Antilles. So look up the Americans. Just like the Maroons, these are Moors. Maroons are Moors. Americans, Moors. You know what I'm saying? We all shared the red flag. Next week we'll get into the white slaves and the white prisoners of war, and show the Africans, the whites, and all the prisoners of war that we had. We put them on the camps. And like I said, the camps broke down, and then they just flipped who was leading. And the traders helped the white people, support the Moors and put them to work. Yeah, no, we are the Amarukan, the Shi, the the Washita. Like, we're the ones that fought back. We're the ones who put in the work. We're the ones why y'all niggas know what an Egyptian or any of that shit is today. Cause we're the ones who kept it going, B. That's why we the most hated. Because we were the most together. Okay? We had the, like I said, the global army that policed the world. That's us. Because so many, after the millennial reign, shit got so disgustingly out of favor, we had to go into periods of remission where we would regroup. And during that time, niggas would come up. And then we would shut them down, and then they would regroup, and it just got to that. So now we're at the point where everything is over for them. So let's get in our proper persons and make this thing happen, man. Stop letting these foreigners make you hate your country. Meanwhile, they come here and take all your resources. You know what I'm saying? So, anybody have any questions? We close out. So again, please check out www.aseertheducateers.com. I really hope this records. Definitely check that out if you haven't already. Please check that out. Also, check out www.cordobaorganics.com, as well as ADOT app on Google and Apple Play. You can check that out if you haven't already. Please subscribe, download. Also on YouTube, I'm trying to get to 60,000 after being on it for almost 10 years. So if y'all can help out, spread the word, that would be great. Yeah, I didn't get to play some of the stuff I wanted to show, but we'll do that next time. You know what I mean? So yeah, if you haven't already, also please get your copy of The Dark Scroll 418, the world's most dangerous comic book novel. It's definitely out now. Anybody that's into what's going on, like I said, I have a section in there that is basically, I think, the impetus for sinners, or at least a part of it. Not to toot my own horn, but if I don't, who will? Specifically page 116 in the chapter I have on there called Wrongdoers Respect Me, Even in the Devil's Juke Joint. So you read it and then you tell me what you think. So I appreciate it. It depends. I haven't seen any flags on these orbs. I just be seeing them zipping through, causing havoc, bouncing, but not really blowing nothing up. They just be messing with these niggas. That's how I also know that's some shit that Moors would do. That's what they did with the Corvettes when we would seize the ships. We would send the Corvettes out mad different ways, and while they looking at all the Corvettes, we done jumped on the ship already. We ill like that. So when you see the Shriners in their little thing and they driving those little red cars, that's them imitating us taking their ships in the little Corvettes. That's what Prince was talking about in Little Red Corvette. Baby, you much too fast. You know what I'm saying? We was seizing them all. We seized them. Matter of fact, go on the app and look at the lyrics that I have for Prince's song called Moorish Spain. Read it for yourself. Yeah, I think all of that is us. And then the ones that's not us is versions of them that they're trying to use against us. But our shit is more technologically advanced. Yeah, that's how they treating them. They treating them the same way we treated them on the seas. It's just now we're using ships. Next week, though, I'll get into the Moorish Zeppelins and the Moorish dirigibles. But yeah, big up to all of the Moors on YouTube doing their thing. Inshallah, let's keep inspiring each other to do the work. And let's create this unified front. This Barbary YouTube is a real thing, man. And we not having it. We not out here. You know what I mean? Let's stop it. Let's stop getting caught up with what these slaves gonna do, because they never gonna make it. They're gonna have to come and resurrect themselves as Moors. It ain't supposed to do that for them. So don't cast your pearls of swine wars. Let's keep it moving. Stay on the path. Love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, and equality. In ruina, Romum mortis. Pax et amor, preconium, alut laudibus nobilis. And Pax magnus gradatus. Vada me